Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a review for you guys today. It's called Imaginarium. This is from Bombyx Studios, as well as Bruno Catala. David, one of your favorite designers of all time.
Absolutely.
This one's called The Dream Factory. So this is very much an engine building game with a very, very unique visual appeal to it, for sure.
Yes. This is probably, well, I'm going to go ahead and say, this is probably one of the, if not the most unique games I've ever seen graphically. Some of the characters on these cards are absolutely bizarre. I'd like to say that this is going to be something either people love or don't like.
Yeah, I think they'll fall on either side of that fence.
I think most people love it, though. You got to respect it for being bold, anyway.
Absolutely. So the idea behind the game is that you're all crafters or creators, inventors, and you're creating these machines in front of you. Each player has a player board in front of them, and on this player board, they have a spot across the bottom for 4 different machines. What's really cool about this game, and one of the things I really enjoy is that most games, when you build something into your tableau, you can just replace or remove cards. This one actually has actions that once you fill this up, you can't build any more into it. There's actions that allow you to combine them or have to remove them before you can put new machines in. So you have a lot of machines that you'll be able to purchase, but you have to set them off to the side before you have room to build them into your player board.
Right, absolutely. The combining and dismantling comes into play far sooner than you'd expect to.
Speaking of machines, there's 5 different types of machines in the game. They all do different types of things, but your basic machine is your production machines. Those are going to produce your 3 types of resources or the currency in the game. The resources are your wood, your copper, and your crystal, and the currency is the charcoalium.
Yes, charcoalium.
The charcoalium is going to be used to buy all the cards within the game. Speaking of the cards again, you have production, which will produce those types of resources. You have transmutation, which will either give you special abilities to the game or enhance your production machines through the course of the game. You have attack cards, you have defense cards. These are really unique because they allow you to not only attack one player, but everyone else at the table.
Yeah, and also you got to keep in mind, you can't just combine these things willy-nilly.
Yeah.
There are certain cards that combine with certain cards, so you're going to take all of that into consideration when you're grabbing these things.
The last type of card is your special cards. These have all kinds of unique abilities. Some of them grant victory points, some allow you to manipulate things through the game. Also, the other type of card in the game are your assistants. Across the top of your player board, you have a spot for 3 different assistants. Once you have your 3rd assistant, you cannot replace those either. You're locked into the 3 that you gather. The assistants cost charcoalium as well, and those break every type of rule within the game that you can imagine.
And break them in a major way, in so much so you'd think this can't be legal to use this card, but all of them feel that way. So in the end, they all feel like they're pretty well balanced.
Everyone's going to have a shield in front of them. We've taken the 2 other players here. We have a 4-player game set up away so you guys can see everything. The player shield is going to hide all of your particular resources and currencies in the game. Plus, on the backside, it walks you through everything that you need to know within the game. Also, each player has a handyman over here. These are like the worker placement people that you're going to be placing in these different areas in the bric-a-brac. The bric-a-brac is going to hold all 10 of the worker placement spots within the game. The final 3 components are your victory points. This is a race. The first player to announce that they have 20 victory points, again hidden behind their player shield, will signify the end of the game. Those aren't announced until the end of a round. We'll talk about a round in a moment. How you gain those victory points are from the projects. The majority of the victory points you gain are from the projects that are up here. These require you to do a lot of different things, like have a specific number of particular machines within your player board, and they kind of gear you to go one direction. They're not necessarily making you build the best engine, but they are making you build very specific things within that player board.
Yeah, and what's interesting about these and the other points you'll get, we said they're all stored behind your player shield, so it's very easy for players to lose track of who scored what points. When you go to one of these projects, you're going to score the points on the tile, but if you're 2nd, 3rd, or 4th to go there, you're going to score 1 less point. So it's a little difficult to keep track. It's fun, even though it's a race game, it feels like it could be anyone's game in the end.
Absolutely. And to mark any time that you go those, you have these small discs that you'll be able to place on these, noting that you've scored for that particular project. You can't score for the same project over and over. Each player is also going to have the player board that we mentioned in front of us. This player board is going to house those different cards, top and bottom, plus it has a dial in the center. This dial points to 2 of the 6 possible actions that you can take every turn. We'll talk about those actions. So to start the game, everyone's going to get a specific player board. All the player boards, they may look the same. However, in in the upper right-hand corner, it's going to tell you your player order at the very start of the game, the cards you're going to start with from the machine deck. It's also going to tell you which of these resources and how much charcoalium you're going to start with at the beginning of the game. Then you're going to seed your handyman according to the chart on the left hand of the bric-a-brac. That's only the starting sequence for the beginning of the game. We'll tell you turn order will change from round after round. So once that happens, it's a player's turn. And the actual sequence of the game is very simple to understand. The very first thing that happens is called the planning phase. This is done in turn order according to where you're seated on the staircase. So being the blue player, I can choose any of the 7 spots across the bottom. These will allow me to acquire more machines. Or I can go into one of the 3 resource spaces that allow me to gather more charcoalium. Once I am done, the player 2 will then get to place one of theirs, and we'll keep going around the table until the entire planning phase is done. Now there is one rule here that you have to pay attention to. You can't block a location from another player. You have to physically have the resources in order to go to that particular location. Each of these locations, minus the charcoalium spot, requires you to have a specific number of charcoalium to buy that card. And that is what's printed on the player board or on the game board, plus whatever the card's value is. So when you go to this location, you have to physically have 5 charcoalium.
Right. So once everyone is placed out there during the planning phase, no one's taken anything at that point. Then you move on to the implementation phase, and this is going to go in player turn order, but according to the new order that's dictated on the board here. So we mentioned player order is going to change. In the following round, and starting right now, it's going to start with the player furthest to the left in the bric-a-brac and move all the way around. So in this case, the pink player is going to go first. And before the pink player or any player on their turn takes their card from the bric-a-brac, you're going to run through all of the machines below your player board, collecting resources. Now this is important because you're going to be able to collect some resources that will allow you to potentially do some of the things you're wanting to do in the bric-a-brac. So you're going to go through, in this case, I would grab a charcoalium and a copper. So I'd take those resources, now I have those to spend. Then I go up here, I would spend 5 charcoalium to take this card. Now, here's the important thing. You don't add these cards to your machine boards below your board. You store them sideways to the right of your player board. When you acquire machines, you're acquiring them in an unrepaired state. Throughout the game, you're going to be taking potentially another action that repairs these machines and brings them down here below your board.
Yeah. Let's talk briefly about the card anatomy so you understand these better. In the upper left-hand corner, that is the level of the card. There's other level 1s, level 2s, and level 3s. This is important when you dismantle the machine. The other thing is the resources that are required in order to build that machine, the ability of the machine, and then off to the left, you're going to see some off to the right of that, you're going to see some numbers. Those are taken into effect when you organize or reorganize your cards and start stacking cards together. They give you additional abilities. So the more charcoalium production machines you may have, they produce more charcoalium when they're stacked on top of one another.
Right, and then the last bit of information on the card, on the very far right of the bottom of the card, are the different cards that can indeed be combined with that card in order to sort of fire it off at the higher levels.
So once he is done acquiring his card, his marker is going to move over here. So that means he's going to be the first player on the next round. Then he has the ability to take 2 actions. Now there's a variety of actions within the game. There's 6 in total. You can point these 2 markers to any 2 actions that you wish. So what I'm basically saying is once you've chosen 2 markers, the next round or the next time it comes around to me, it doesn't have to go clockwise or counterclockwise. I can choose any other 2 markers. You just can't choose the same 2 actions from one round to the next round.
Yeah, it makes it really interesting because while you choose the same 2, you could choose one of those and the other one next to it and then back and forth that way. But it just makes it so that you can't abuse the same action over and over.
That's right. We're going to talk about the 6 actions because they're very simple. One of them is to simply recruit. That is when you look at the 3 available assistants and you get to buy any one of them onto your player board. The cost is located right there on the left-hand side of those assistants. Again, once you have 3, you no longer can replace any more. Right below that is simply to take some charcoalium.
Right.
It's the simplest one to explain. You take 3 charcoalium and put them back behind your player board.
And you'll be doing that plenty in the game for sure.
Absolutely.
The next action is to repair. Now we've talked about building cards. That's one and the same. You're going to be taking the card off to the right of your board and building one of them. This is when you have to spend these resources, giving them back to the general supply, and placing them in an empty slot on your machine. It's important to note you can't just go ahead and combine them. That's a whole separate action. You have to put them into an empty slot. If you don't have an empty slot, you cannot repair.
Just to the left of that one is the transactions. You can take up to 3 different transactions. These allow you to convert resources or charcoalium into resources or vice versa, or to even give up a lot of charcoalium to gain just flat out victory points. After that is dismantle. There's 2 ways that you can dismantle cards. As David had already said, when you acquire new cards, they're placed sideways to the right of your player board. You can have as many of those cards unbuilt as you so wish. You can dismantle in one of 2 ways. You can dismantle any of those cards that are not built into your player board, or you can dismantle cards that you have built. One rule that you cannot break. If you have cards that are already reorganized together or stacked, you can't dismantle any of those. You have to break them apart first and then dismantle them. Dismantling means that you're going to take that card and throw it into the chomper. It's permanently removed from either your player board or off to the side. Now, 2 things can happen. If it is off to your player side, you're going to look at the resources that are available on that card and the level of the card. In this case, this is a level 1 card, and it provides wood. So I get 1 wood.
Right.
So you're just basically picking from the available resources however high that level is. If you break it apart from your actual player board, you have some options here. 1, you can just dismantle the card completely, get rid of it, and get victory points equal to the level. So the higher level, the more victory points you get. Or you can take the resources times 2. So in this case, instead of getting 2 wood back, I get 4 wood back.
Yeah, it could be a huge boon for getting resources that way, and it's completely overlooked by a lot of first-time players.
The last one is to reorganize.
Yeah, to reorganize, we talked about this already. This is where you're going to be combining your machines. So for the most part, you're going to be taking machines that you've built that might synergize with other ones and adding them together. And they go together in very particular ways, and they're going to basically enhance one another. So if something gave me 1 copper before, if I add a card to it, it's often going to now give me 3 copper, or a variety of different things depending on the cards you're adding.
And you can't just combine any cards. Over to the right-hand side of your player board or player screen, it shows you the different colors that combine, how many of those cards can and cannot combine together. Plus, all the cards have the rules basically on here as well. You have a serial number and then the cards that can combine with them. The next thing that happens on your turn, once you've done any of those 2 actions, then you have the option of claiming one of these projects if you are able to do so. For instance, this one simply says, revealed to the entire table that I have 15 charcoalium hidden behind my player board. If I do that and I show that, I get to place my token on there and claim the number of victory points on this particular project, in this case 3. Everyone who does that for the rest of the game will get 1 fewer victory point. Final thing you do is you finish your turn. You clean up, and then it's the next player's turn until all the players have taken all 5 of those steps.
And it's important to note, too, that on those projects, if you fulfill more than one of them, you can put your counters on as many of them as you want.
Yeah.
And then it's time to check and reset. So you're going to basically check to see if anyone has achieved the end game.
20 victory points.
20 victory points. You're obviously going to be doing that privately behind your boards before you announce it.
Yeah.
If you haven't, or if you have, it's the end of the game. If you haven't, you're going to get ready for the next round.
Yeah, so the reset's very simple. You're automatically going to know the first player for the next round. The last card, wherever that last card may be on the bric-a-brac on the bottom, is going to go to the chomper, meaning that it's been removed from the game. Everything's going to scoot to the right. New cards are going to be introduced, and you're going to refill the assistants. These assistants, when they're purchased, they don't actually refill during the round. They're going to refill at the end of the round. So a lot of these spots are first come, first serve.
Right.
All right, so you're going to keep doing that until you have 20 points. At the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. Also, you're going to get 2 victory points for each of the 4 different types of resources in the game, whoever has the most of them. So if you have the most in all 4 of them, you're going to get an extra 8 victory points.
Right, so that's just one example of how the points can be quite a bit more than what you'd expect in what some people might regard as a race game.
Yeah.
This is not a race game, and the winner of that race wins.
Yeah.
I think in our first game, you scored 32 points, and Ryan and I both had 20-something. So we're all over 20 points, and it was all pretty, within a nice range.
So what do you think? I mean, this, obviously it's a review. Just tell me, your opinion about it.
I'll just say straight up, I really like this game. Like this game, I can't wait for this to come over here. I think it's been out over in Europe
right
for
now.
a while, and it's coming over here. never seen a game like this. This is the kind of game that's going to sit on a table and people are going to walk by, like at a convention or something, and go, "What on earth are you playing?" I mean, these mini sculpts alone are going to grab attention, and then when people actually look close at these things, these cards are bananas.
Yeah.
Like really bizarre-looking creatures. All that said, the gameplay is also awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's an engine builder. At the end of the day, you are constructing new machines into your player board, reorganizing them to get the highest benefit. However, you can spend all of your time just creating a really cool engine, but not collecting victory points. You have to be very cautious about what the projects are at the start of the game, and then feed your engine into that. So I really enjoy that. The other part I love about the game, a lot of people may not like this, but I like games that present you with decisions to make across the entire game. This game, limiting the amount of machines that you can have is ingenious. Like a lot of people just say, I want to immediately when I claim this, I just want to build it onto something. Well, no, you don't. You have to first put it here, and then you have to actually repair it and build it. And if you already have spots that are filled, you have to then break things apart. So everything is kind of a multi-step process to do the things that you wish to do.
Yeah, it's like a factory. You know, there's going to be bottleneck situations all along the process. Anyone who plays this for the first time, I almost guarantee, you're going to acquire cards for the most part in the first part of the phase or first part of the round. As soon as you get these things filled up, you're going to realize how important these Charcoalium spots are too, because these are not leftover spots that like, I guess I'll take Charcoalium. You'll be going there right away because you'll find eventually, I don't have any place to put my cards, so why go get more cards right now? Unless you see some really nice cards that are going to synergize with you down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's even more evident with the player board itself. There are many times that you want to build something, but you also want to reorganize on the same turn. You can't do that. So again, that's a multi-step process. You have to build it, and then reorganize it, and then maybe build something else in. So you could be taking 3 turns, 4 turns, before you can actually start claiming these cards. So it really gears towards the people that can build the right kind of engines and then feed into these projects as well. The other thing I'll say too is these assistants are amazing. Like a lot of them, I've played 2 games of this now, and the first time that I played the game, the very first assistant I got, I was looking at it and being like, there's no way I can't win this game. And then I saw another player get another assistant that allowed them to break some of the rules that are inherent to the way that the dial works.
You didn't even have to worry about what your dial was. You could just pick any 2 actions.
And I was like, there's no way I'm going to win now. He can win. And then you got one that allowed you to build even more machines.
That is huge. I had one that allowed me, instead of 4 slots, I had 6 slots down here, which gave you maximum flexibility. Because some of these projects, we had a project out that was first person to have 6 cards.
Yeah.
And of course, it's way easier for me to get 6 cards because I didn't have to do any combining to do so.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is there's a lot of really cool assistants in here, and every time I played, I thought, well, this is a game breaker. Nope, someone else got one that was a game breaker as well. That's a cool feeling when you start seeing these cards and how they interact with the machines.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I'd say the timing and how you use this dial, like Jeremy was saying, something might take you 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, depending on what you're trying to do. If something that you could have made happen in 2 turns ends up taking you 3 turns, at the end of the game, that could be the difference between who wins.
Yeah.
Because in our games, that last round came around, someone ended it, and the other players were 1 round away from doing a big move to score them a lot of points too. So that's where the race feeling comes in, and it's a really nice, fun intensity.
One of the cons I would say about the game is that it doesn't lend itself real easy to understand the reorganizing the first time that you play. You really have to play it once or twice to understand
with which cards go with
which cards go with which cards, and how they allow you to kind of manipulate things. It does take a little bit to wrap your brain around how those cards work together. Even though it's very simple here and it's very simple on the cards itself, it's really playing and experimenting to see how the cards work together, which can create some hassle for new players.
Yeah, I would say to get around that, absolutely use this player aid and embrace it. I didn't do that the first time I played, so getting that combination thing down, it's very, very clear right here, and it's nice that everyone has this in front of them. This breaks down the game turn, the explanation of combinations, and very clearly all the actions you can take.
The other negative I would say too is that the second time I played the game, I was able to race to the end. Literally, the game was over in 4 rounds, and that's because it's a little bit player controlled at times. If people allow you to build a very strong engine and to get these projects done early, it's very hard to catch up in this game.
Yeah.
Like once you get that lead and you start collecting those points, because 1 point can be a huge difference in the game.
Yeah, and that's what makes the game really exciting is that touch and go, especially when you come close to the end of the game. You're really hoping you get one more turn to finish out something you want to do, and then before you know it, someone else has finished the game. So a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. Plus, like I said, the game, you've never seen a game like this. Plus, the gameplay is there to back it up. So that's Imaginarium.
Yeah, it's definitely going to appeal to a wide audience for people that are just getting into games, plus people like us who play a lot of games.
Yeah.
For sure. This is Imaginarium, the Dream Factory from Bruno Catala and Bombyx Studios. It is a 2 to 5 player game, plays in about an hour. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.